Hey everybody, how's it going? And I'm going to walk through BitInfoCharts. That's a website that has data about crypto assets such as Bitcoin, and it has a really intense amount of data, which is really cool to read. It's got good stories in it, and let's see what we can find out. So, as I said, it's called BitInfoCharts, and you can just go on Google, search for this, and the first link is bitinfocharts.com, and that's what we're interested in. So now, as you can see on the screen, it has a bunch of crypto assets and Bitcoin's right here. And I see a lot of data on this homepage, landing page, but looks really well framed, looks really well organized, and seems like we might be in for a treat. A lot of data points, that's always nice. So let's click on Bitcoin. So this is the data page for Bitcoin. As you can see from first sight, we're seeing a lot of numbers, labels to them, a few trends here and there. So let's go, one by one and see what this page is telling us. So Bitcoin, BTC, price stats and information. So the first thing is total Bitcoin. This is the existing number of Bitcoin. A little bit of background, there can be only 21 million Bitcoin. So right now, this is the number of Bitcoins that exists, which is about 18.5 million Bitcoin. So we're slowly getting close to the 21 million maximum Bitcoins that can exist. Although the difficulty to mine these Bitcoins or generate the remaining approximately, let's say 3 million or 2.5 million Bitcoins is going to be much harder. So it gets really hard. And I think the last Bitcoin to be mined would be in the year 2140, because this requires a lot of electricity and solving a lot of cryptographic problems and so forth. Anyway, the second metric is market capitalization. So this is about $537 billion. So that's really impressive, especially considering where Bitcoin started from and where it's at today. It was just almost like a few years ago that it did peak, but it was nowhere near this. Like 10 years ago, this was like less than $50 billion, right? So that's where the market capitalization is at. Although this can go in up and down because it is a function of the Bitcoin price, which is our third metric over here, right? So Bitcoin price is one Bitcoin is equal to $28,929.50. So that's what the price is right now. It has climbed a lot, as you can see in this chart over here, that it did, it was about 18,000 just last month, and it almost increased by 10,000. And if you look like a year ago, just in March, it was about 8,000. And it does seem to be climbing up. And we don't know what the price will be tomorrow, but this is what it's right now. Another quick bit over here, which is kind of fascinating, is so they have prices by exchanges. So some of the exchanges are showing a little different. Some of them are showing close to what's mentioned here. I think probably they take an average of this. I'm not sure, but these are different exchanges like Binance, Kraken, BitPay. You can go in and buy Bitcoin in these indices or exchanges. Sorry. Okay, so this is, as we discussed, like the price chart of Bitcoin. It seems to be going up. Was kind of flat, first half of the year. There was a dip in March because of the, the liquidity crisis we had because of coronavirus and the lockdowns. But now, it seems to be climbing up. And there is a thesis, for that, which is not mentioned here, so I'll skip it. But it is, if you guys read about it, it is, people are using it as a inflation hedge or a scarce asset, which is, kind of bounded because, as we discussed, it can be only 21 billion Bitcoins. And this is like a good accounting system of this is a candidate for a potential inflation controlling asset. So kind of like a savings account. anyway, moving forward, transactions in the last 24 hours. So there have been 344,000 transactions in the last 24 hours. So that's kind of interesting. So there are a considerable amount of transactions. You know, you can say almost say that, you know, 344,000 people, or like twice that, are transaction, doing the transactions. That's fairly large. That's fairly impressive. These transactions are taking place. Transactions average per hour. Okay, so that was 24 hours per hour. It's 14,000. So that's the number of, so what is the transaction in Bitcoin? Just to recap real quick. So transaction is just essentially, one person sending Bitcoin to the other person, another person receiving it. Now this could be, for example, someone sending some money to an NGO, through Bitcoin halfway across the world. It could be also, someone buying Bitcoin on an exchange, selling it on an exchange, and so forth. Bitcoin sent in the last 24 hours. So this is the number of Bitcoins sent. These were the number of transactions, but how many transactions, like out of these transactions, in these transactions, how many Bitcoins were sent? So there were about 1 million Bitcoins that were sent, or 1.8 million. So that's really impressive. And this is kind of a good metric right here, which says like it's 9.74% of the market cap. That's really impressive. So almost like 9% of 9.5% of the market cap is being sent, or you can think of it like 9.7% of the Bitcoin protocol, or if you think of it as a company or a product, it's being used per hour, 10% of that, or 9.74% of that. Bitcoin sent average per hours, and similarly 75,447 Bitcoins were sent on an average in an hour. That's about $2 billion. And so just quickly hop back to 24 hours, there were just, because I missed the dollar amount, it was 52 billion US dollars that was sent in the last 24 hours. Interesting. Average transaction value. So each transaction, right? So we have 344,621 transactions. What was the average value? So average value was 5.25 Bitcoins, which is equal to 152,000 USD. So really, again, like, so what does that tell us? So this tells us like most, or like on an average at least, the transactions seem to be like huge transactions. They don't seem to be transactions where someone's buying a coffee or like smaller amounts in exchanges. These seem to be like big transactions that are happening. It could be like business to business, could be like big investors coming in, big investors going out, but these are fairly big, right? Because no normal person has $152,000. Now, if we were to poke holes in it, could be that there are a few outliers which are overwhelming the average. So that could be the case. But assuming the distribution is fairly even, then this says that big transactions are taking place, not small. Median transaction. Okay, there we go. Right. So this tells us the center of the transaction value. If we plot the transaction values on the x-axis, or if you imagine it like where's the middle of the value. So the middle of the value is 0.029, 836 US dollars. So half of them are below this, half of them are above this amount. So really interesting. So half of these are in fact being smaller amounts. That's a good story. So half of them are smaller. It's just that the average is getting skewed because of the other half. Interesting. Average transaction fee. So this is the fee associated for a transaction. So Bitcoin system is not absolutely free. There is certain transaction fee that might be in play. So that's about $8.75 or 0.0003 Bitcoins. Median transaction fee. Median transaction fee is similarly average. Median is this, right? Almost half of it. So that kind of makes sense. You know, that's the median one. It can be smaller than this or larger than this as well. So yeah, this is as they've plotted the Bitcoin fee histogram in the last 24 hours. So yeah, you know, as you know, inferred from the last two metrics, the as you can see, there are like a lot of transactions which have like, you know, really low, almost like less than $2 of transaction fee. But then there are like a lot of them which have like between $4 to $6 transaction fee as well. Block time. What is block time? Average time between blocks. So as many of you might know, Bitcoin is a blockchain. So there is, you know, there's the Genesis blockchain block, which was the first block, which has so each block has transactions, right? And each block gets appended onto the next one, onto the previous one, gets appended. So the first one was the origin one, then there's next one. Similarly, blocks keep getting added. So this says like in every 8 minutes, a new block is added into the blockchain. Block count. So blocks count is the total number of blocks that have ever been formed. So that's about 663,773 blocks as of today. Block size is about 881 kilobytes. Blocks in the last 24 hours, 168 blocks were created. Blocks average per hour last 24 hours are 7 blocks per hour are created. You know, rewards per block. So when you know, miners get rewarded, you know, for a block, and the reward gets halved every 4 years. That's called the halving, and you know that happens. So for now, it's about 6.25 plus, you know, 0.6 BTC. That's about $200,000. You get rewarded. Really interesting. Reward in the last 24 hours is similar, you know, sorry, in the last 24 hours, okay. Yeah, so 33 million approximately. Yeah, because like 168 blocks were created. So if we, you know, do the math, you know, multiply both of these figures, then we get this figure right here. Let's see what else is really interesting. So I don't know completely like what difficulty is, and even like fee and reward, but difficulty, you know, like in a theoretical, like high level sense, it's the amount of work that needs to be done to mine a Bitcoin, and that increases as time goes by. As more Bitcoins are mined, it increases. So I'm gonna guess it's 8.6 T. I'm not sure what that is, so we might have to look that up. So yeah, let's look it up, right? Oops. Okay, so this might have the explanation for it. Let's see. Oh, well, we did see that it's, you know, as you can see, this is 2016. It was very low. It's getting, you know, really hard as time goes by. Okay, there we go. I think this might have it. Okay, what is difficulty? Difficulty is a measure of how difficult is it to find a hash below a given target. The Bitcoin network has a global block difficulty. Valid blocks must have a hash below this target. Mining pools also have pool-specific share difficulty setting, a lower limit for shares. Okay. So yeah, formula for difficulty is difficulty target by. Okay, we'll come back to that, but yeah, I'm not sure completely what this is. But yeah, let's look into this, right? Hash rate is, you know, let's look. I think they have a. Whoa. Yeah, I'm not sure what exactly this is as well, but interesting. This seems to be also increasing with time, 2017, and then now it's increasing a lot. So Bitcoin mining profitability. So this is, I think, as it's just the profitability of mining Bitcoin. 0.2062 US dollars per day for 1 T hash per second. So yeah, I think that this shows like, I mean, I have to read into a lot of terms and metrics in the ecosystem as well. Top 100 richest. What is that? I'm guessing these are the top richest 100 like addresses. Okay, yeah, or addresses meaning like people who hold Bitcoin. This is pretty awesome, right? It says like 49% of total addresses, or 49.81% of total addresses are between 0 to 0.001 Bitcoin. 24 are in this range. So only 2% of the addresses, or 2% of Bitcoin holders, or 2% of Bitcoin users, or 2% of Bitcoin of people have between 1 to 10 Bitcoins. So it's like really scarce, really scarce. Even like 0.1 to 1, only 6% people have. 1 to 10, as we saw, 10 to 100, and less than 0.5% have between 10 to 100. Wow. And only almost like 0% have between 10,000 to 100,000. So it's like, what, I mean, is it safe to say that the distribution is not good? Well, it is. But yeah, this doesn't look good. This says that most of the Bitcoins are sort of concentrated at the top, as one might say. But yeah, really cool data, addresses with their balances, percent of coin, first in, last in, number of ins, first out, last out. Really interesting. Oh, they also have some information on the wallets. Interesting. Wealth distribution. Okay, so top 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 addresses. Let's see what this is. Okay, it's the same chart. Yeah. This seems to be a similar metric. So this is kind of interesting, like active addresses in the last 24 hours, number of unique from and to addresses per day. So it's close to people who own, or businesses who use Bitcoin or have money in Bitcoin. This could be normal people, investors, institutions, normal people who are investing in it, or cross-border transactions people are trying to send. So that's about 1 million addresses. A person or a business could have multiple addresses to them as well. So this doesn't really tell what's happening, but close to that. Safe to say, at most it has 1 million people. That's the way to put it. 100 largest transactions. Ooh, what is this? Yeah, 934,000 Bitcoins. Oh, okay, I see. In the top 100 largest transactions in the last 24 hours, this was the total amount of Bitcoin sent. So that's about 900,000 Bitcoins, or $27 billion were exchanged. Wow, kind of impressed. 51% of the total. Okay, the top 100 transactions are transacting for 51% of the value. First block, and this is as we talked about when I was talking about the blockchain, and each block gets appended. So the first block, the Genesis block, the very first block, was traded in 2009, January 9th. Blockchain size, which is the blockchain database, which is we have all these blocks, and we have these transactions embedded in them, and that's about 370 gigabytes. Yeah, I mean, it's big, but it's not really big, but yeah, it's still big. But I mean, considering like the amount of information that it's exchanging and storing, I would say that's really impressive that you can have all these billions of dollars with these like millions of addresses, exchanging value, storing value. And this is just the entire file. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Because usually, like, if you go to a bank database or any other databases, they can be fairly huge. In my experience, I've seen like, gigabytes of multiple databases and terabytes and so forth. Reddit subscribers, it does make it is an important metric. So that's about 1.8 million. Tweets per day with hashtag Bitcoin, that's about 80,886. It's a good social media presence. GitHub release, so this project is open source and or not open source. I mean, the code is open source. And, you can see the release history over there. You can even see the code over here and so forth if you're interested. It is under that MIT license. GitHub stars, 47,000. GitHub last commit was 29th December, so this was yesterday. Homepage, if you ever want to go to bitcoin.org, that's bitcoin.org, and you can find out. I think this is run by the Bitcoin Foundation, I believe. Yeah, the network status. And yeah, this seems to be like an active website where they post updates. Days destroyed last 24 hours by total Bitcoins. Don't know what that is. Google Trends with Bitcoin. So they didn't show the interest over time, but they don't have the the time axis. But one thing I can tell you, because I saw the other day, the trends are lower than 2017 when the bubble peaked a few years ago. Now it seems like more like consumers are not searching for it, but rather the institutions are getting into it. From what I've been reading and watching. So yeah, the trend line is sort of still flat as it was in 2017. All right, guys. I think that's about it. Let me know how this video was, and what as I said, there are some terms that I don't still understand, so I'm going to look into it and maybe make a second video on it. Tell me how this data story was. What we got to learn from it, and as we see, this is a really data-rich ecosystem. A lot of data stories are hidden in Bitcoin, and sort of open at the aggregate level. As we can see, there's a lot of information which we can learn from and use. So thank you. Yeah.